1, 2, 3. Come on, join me. Breathe with me. 1, 2. Isn't breathing nice? Honestly, I don't do it enough. All my high anxiety girlies will know exactly what I mean. But there's not often that I'm like, that's good. Let's get into the video. Hi, my name is Grace and welcome back to my space. Hello. First and foremost, I just have to say, thank you so much for all the support on my previous video. I'm so used to only 40 people watching and 400 of you watched. And listen, in the grand scheme of the numbers influencer game, right? 400 doesn't feel like anything, but for a girly who just be talking to herself in a camera and really, this is honestly as therapeutic of a space that I have. 400 people watching your therapy session is a lot of people, but it's even more something when anyone at all can relate, let alone a majority. So I just want to say thank you so much for every nice comment or DM or just message, because there was so much anxiety around posting that, and so that that was just really nice to be heard and not misconstrued. Also, it just was really heartwarming because I knew it. I knew we were all thinking the same thing. I knew we were all in this state of our 20s where we're really anxious and phoning it in, and everyone's fronting and everyone's lying about the fact that they're fronting. And it was really nice just to come and share some of my experience and have people be finally somebody put words to how I feel about this up and down roller coaster that can be your 20s, that can be trying to achieve goals and dreams of any kind, while also in a world that's, because of social media, everything feels really visible without anything being visible, right? People feel like they know what's going on in your life and then they don't, but because they feel like they know what's going on in your life, they put all these expectations. And I'm glad that me sharing some of my truth helped other people feel safe in whatever their truth is. Okay, long intro and thank yous aside. Let's get into this week. So if y'all don't know, there is all types of unrest in this entertainment industry. And I also want to just put it out there that as a member of SAG, I am 100% support of the WGA, because I think the WGA, as much as they're fighting for writers, a guild I actually hope to be in one day, but as much as they're fighting for writers, they're just fighting for the overall health of the creatives, right? Especially the idea of starting a career. How are we supported by our industry so that we can start our career? Most people don't think about that because their first job pays them in a way that is livable, right? Their first big career job, corporate or otherwise, has a system that creates a livable lifestyle for the most part, right? When you talk about your first big corporate job, your first big financial job, whatever it may be, medical job, whatever. And our industry does not have that. It does not have that foundation for people to build. So you're building on air. And what the WGA is doing is fighting for concrete to be put underneath us. And we're not just building on air anymore. So we just got to get that out the way. We support the union over here, girl. But that's actually not what today's video is about. I often get questions about this, whether in my DMs or in life or just from fellow friends. And it's how I manage auditioning. I have been told that my system for auditioning is one of the healthiest ways of doing it. And there's some secrets in my bank that I'm gonna keep in my bank. And y'all might have to pay me for me to give up all my secrets. But the biggest thing that I need to come on here and share with the girls is how you emotionally and mentally survive the hardest part of our job as an actor. There's so many things that make auditioning one of the hardest parts of your job, because it is the thing you will do the most. It's the thing where you experience the most rejection. It's the part of the industry where it's imagine somebody dangling $100 bill on a hook line, just in front of you, just boop, 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 boop. That's very much what it gives to audition. where you're like, oh my God, if I get this, my whole life will change. And I didn't get it and nothing changed. Like, it's just like that again and again and again. It is often the point that breaks people. In this Get Ready With Me, I will talk about my history with auditioning and like how I navigated that. And then just like what I've come to view auditions in a way that is sustainable. A lot of people do not audition sustainably for their mental. Oh my God, that was so intense. Let's pull out some makeup and like loosen the mood. Makeup wise, I've been in such like a soft shadow mood. I call it soft shadow, but like y'all know what I'm talking about, where it's that like, is it a cut crease or is it a perfect blend out, right? Like the shimmer goes throughout the whole lid. I think of Pat McGrath when I think of this look. And so that's kind of what I'm going for, because it kind of fits the theme of the video, which is auditioning is the hardest thing you'll ever do, so you need to be soft to yourself. So point one, when I was in acting school, my acting program was a program for film, television, voiceover, commercial, which basically just meant camera acting. Like, I'm very grateful that I did it, because I think it prepared me more than I can even say for what it really is like to audition in this industry, which is half the battle. In like a basic way, what is an audition? For anyone who may not know, and it's totally understandable and totally fine if you don't, auditions are basically the job interview portion of being an actor. So when you apply for a standard job, you do an interview. You might be applying for 40 jobs at a time. And then when you are lucky, you get whatever the job may be. If I don't look directly into the camera, it's because I am trying to do the makeup. I'm not necessarily going to be looking at you this whole time, but just know we're here. We're here, I promise. Anyways, getting into my Pure Cosmetics booklet. So job interviews. There's just kind of like this standard when it comes to applying for a job, that you'll apply for 30, 40, whatever, and then you get the job, and then that part of your life ends. So one thing we can all relate to is that like awful period of when you are applying to way too many jobs and you're hearing no, and it's like it's so much pressure and you're so annoyed. And then you get the job and then that ends. For the most part, once you get a job, you have the understanding that you're going to be there and steady for a while. And you're not necessarily like game planning from the beginning of what your next job will be. For acting, then when you get the job, you really get like 2 weeks to enjoy the fact that you had the job. And then your brain immediately needs to start planning for its next one. Actually, what might even happen depending on your team is you will have gotten the job. You would have been like, oh my God, my life is changing. And your team is already sending you your next job interview, aka audition. With that, it means like this thing that we all hate. As an actor, it never ends. There's no point when you're really like free from auditioning until you get to a place in your career, right? Where you are Leonardo DiCaprio and they have seen you do everything. They can visualize you because they've physically seen you play every part. Within that, there are some actors who they'll book a job. Let's say they book like a huge hit TV show and it's their first job, but they booked it and they're like, you know what? They go to their team and they're like, I hate auditioning so much. From now on, I want to be offer only. That basically just means like when an audition comes up, the team will then respond and be like, she's not going to tape for that, which is, send in material of her saying the lines. That's what an audition is. Whether you do it in person or over camera, at home, you're sending material of you doing the lines. She's not going to do that. Y'all can assume she is a star, but we're going to make an offer of how much money she'll take for the part. Now, there's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like that does work for people. But on like a personal level, I'm big on like, you want to have a repertoire of work that really can speak to any role. As amazing as a first opportunity Gossip Girl is, like there wasn't a huge variety in what I got to show. So I don't want Gossip Girl to speak for all I can do, because then I'm automatically limited. In theory, auditioning, it's like, yeah, that seems like it sucks. But if you really visualize it from the lens of constantly doing job interviews, you have a job. Like that's the worst part. That's the worst part. And I need people to understand that it does not end when you book a job. You're constantly being told to plan for your next thing. I will never forget, like Gossip Girl is like 85% confirmed, right? Like I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm about to get this in the bag. And my team is sending me 4 or 5 auditions. And I'm like, guys, one? Like, I don't understand. And now it's like, oh yeah, because the grind actually doesn't stop, because auditioning is just an actual aspect of the job. I stopped viewing auditioning as like a grind and more so just like a job requirement. I think I made it a little bit easier for me because I stopped trying to mentally escape them. That's when I started to actively try to figure out ways to enjoy it. What about auditioning that I like? There are so many things that are just gonna suck always, but it's not a thing in my career I can ever escape. I'm never gonna get to a place where I'm not auditioning anymore. So how can I work with that? And I always try to come from that place when I try to explain to my friends in the industry or not when I talk to them about auditioning, because I really am big on like getting rid of the mindset that like, it is not a standard of this industry. Because once you accept it for what it is, then you'll be able to go from there, right? Auditioning is, and let me say it again, the hardest thing you'll do for technical reasons, but the biggest is for the emotional gambit. So if you understand that like, it is a byproduct of what I do, it is a byproduct of my industry, I'm always gonna be auditioning, right? Then you can kind of work to find ways to make it a little bit more bearable to always be auditioning. There's multiple ways to do it. There is the in-person, there is self-tape, and then there's Zoom, right? Those are the 3 types of auditions you will do. Y'all know what I meant to put up. A certain disease swept through this planet and basically made in-person auditions fewer and fewer and far between. I've actually never done an in-person audition. I don't know if I would like it more. I like the comfort of my house and being able to do like 10, 15, whatever takes I want to do. Like I like all that stuff. So I can't even necessarily say that I can be like, oh yeah, I would love to go back to doing an in-person audition. And I do get it. Like there's something magical about being in the room. I think about it all the time. I'm like, there's so many jobs that I just know like charisma, because you know, sometimes you just got to let your confidence fly and talk yourself up a little bit. And there's so many jobs that I just know my natural charisma. I'm like, I would have booked that. Because as newer talent, the battle is so uphill. And they are not just casting the perfect person for the role. They are also casting the person that they can put in any room and it's gonna have star quality. Excuse me. Right? So like there's something about you could do an audition room and go into a room and win them over. Like she's taking it, right? That we've lost. And that's not to say like it doesn't happen, like especially bigger talent and like talent that's been in the game or whatever. Theater, like you still self-tape, but when theater started going back to in-person auditions, I said, okay, God is good. Because that is crazy. Asking me to deliver a play in a medium that it will never even, like, I will never even deliver this medium on camera and you want me to tape for it? You're doing a lot, right? But in the same vein, then you have film and TV where I'm like, oh yeah, self-tape does make sense. If you can't be good on my self-tape, you think you're gonna be good on my 60-inch TV? I don't know what to tell you, babes, right? Like way before any of us were like, oh yeah, there's gonna be a pandemic. My acting teachers were like, self-tape, 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 get better at self-tape, learn the technical aspect of self-tape, 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 right? And then the pandemic happened and they were like, you know, we didn't want to say I told you so or whatever, but like the industry was already kind of moving towards tape. I do find that there's almost like a generational divide. Like I find like a lot of Gen Z talent, because of how we use social media, kind of feel more comfortable about popping a camera open and like doing whatever bit in front of it. And I do respect that. Like it is a loss. It is a loss not to be able to bring my full self into a room and win over every director because I put on a charm offensive before I even started the scene. Like it is a loss. Oh my God, I just moved my wig band. Everything got louder. Have I been yelling this whole video? Okay. I totally respect that loss. And I absolutely respect the fact that also like technically for a self-tape, because so that people know there are certain things the casting, associate director, producer, whatever, what say you are looking for. The big things, I must be able to see you, I must be able to hear you, and I must not be distracted. So by see you, it's like the frame the lighting. For an actor, that means another, in an industry where there's so much money, personal money you have to invest to get started, whether it's headshots or training or whatever. Now it's another cost, lights, because I have to see you. Then it's camera. I do my auditions on a camera. It just so happened that before I was professionally auditioning, I was doing this little YouTube channel for my mental health. And so I same camera that I filmed this is how I film my auditions. But camera, right? Do you have a blank wall in your house? Oh, if you don't, it looks like you're buying a backdrop. Another cost. Sound. I need to be able to hear you. If your camera or your phone has crappy sound, some people, now that means I got to get a mic. Then on top of that, distracting. Who's going to read? Not everybody can read for you. Right? Like some people, you love them. They should not be reading your auditions. They're about to tank your career, right? It's so much more on the individual actor. Auditioning is actually a lot of work. And it's why I be trying to tell people, like, it's actually like an active part of our job. And it's a separate conversation what people in SAG and the union in terms of what they're working on to try to get like some sort of payment or whatever for auditioning, because everything I've described is work. I sound mix, and mind you, I'm a perfectionist with a lot of crew editing and PA experience. I've had to edit for previous work jobs, so like of course I'm gonna do a minor edit on an audition. That's just like me personally. I want to make it so clear that like do not run out here and like go buy Adobe Premiere and try to train yourself how to edit. You're okay. You are. Now, if you would like to, also, it's okay. If you would like to pay somebody to edit your auditions and make them look really nice, or get an action coach, there's so much work that can go in auditions, because an audition is a job interview. And we see that some people will do a cover letter and 12 resumes and 25 references and whatever they can to push themselves over a job. An audition's the same way. Whatever your limit is, find your limit. And by limit, I mean whatever you need to do that your performance in your audition is ace. If you are dressing up in full antebellum regalia for every like Jane Eyre audition that comes through, and you're dressing up in your house and you have a whole production, and then you spend all this work for that whole production, and then you start the scene, and then you are saying lines that aren't existent in that scene because you didn't spend any character work, then that's not your limit, right? Your limit needs to be whatever you can do to support the best performance of all time. Beyond the work that an audition takes technically. Auditioning is one of the hardest things on your mental. It's very tough on your mental. And let's get into all the reasons why. First and foremost, no. The word no. Sometimes it's a blessing to hear the word no, because a lot of the times you hear nothing. For a lot of people, no is actually one of the hardest things you can constantly be told, because it starts to feel personal. When I got into this industry, one of the first things when I was sitting with myself and like thinking about like, how am I going to do this, or like whatever, the first thing I had to reckon with is, how will I learn to not be personally victimized by the word no? If no is something that I'm going to hear all the time, because I tell people this all the time, in this industry, no is the standard. It is the standard, and it is not personal. It is extremely difficult to come to terms with the fact that no is a standard that is not personal. It is actually so difficult that I am not somebody, like, I don't say that in statement lightly, right? Because there are some things in this industry that are extremely personal. This is a people's industry. It is actually extremely personal in how things. And I gotta say, like, casting directors are, in my opinion, God's strongest soldiers. Like, they get no love for being the basis of our industry, because a lot of the time they're the villain. I just want to emphasize so much. Casting is not the villain. There can only be one person who gets a part. So trying to find villains will never help you. That's how you become embittered. And like, I think every actor, young, old, or whatever, is fighting the feeling of bitterness. I fight the feeling of bitterness all the time. I fight the urge to be like, I don't care that something good happened to you because I wish it happened to me. Like, I fight that all the time. I am not like some enlightened person who does not feel jealousy or bitterness or like, what the heck, like they gave it to that person or whatever. Like, I'm not a robot, right? But when I stop trying to find villains, now some villains make themselves, but that's not a general thing. They are trying to do justice to their project. Because if they put somebody in a part that they're not right for, that is their reputation. That is their ability to work again, right? Like, if you cast something and you know, the casting choices go so south, like that is a casting director's reputation that could be a make or break in them working again. Everybody just trying to work. It is actually so important to understand what I mean when I say no is the standard and it's not personal, because the no is rooted in the fact that a casting director can only choose one. That means 1,000 people are going for a job and they can only choose one. That makes the one yes a rarity. The moment you send an audition, the odds of you getting it are so small that your expectation should be no. And that is not to say don't dream big. Like, that's not to say like don't put, like, I put my 100% into every audition, and I would kind of get into how I can do that for myself, knowing I expect to hear no. But for the most part, yeah, I'm putting 100% in audition that I know I'm not going to hear a yes back on the actual job. Because no is the standard, maybe is what you hope for, yes is a rarity. Because of that, over the years, I had to train myself then on, if no is the standard, in order for this to work, I need to get something back. If the yes is not what I'm going to expect to get back, what can I expect to get back? And I will answer that question after I put my lashes on. Brief interlude. Okay, we're back. What do I give myself? What do I take from auditions? Considering so far, everything I've described is something being taken from me as the performer, right? Whether it's my time, my talent, navigating a skill that is separate from acting, right? I trained in acting. I know how to act. I know how to be in a room. I know how to respond to everything. And now I have to teach myself to respond to nothing at the same level of quality. That is a different muscle. That is a different skill. And that is a different level of difficulty, right? And when would I get that training? You get that training with auditioning. And that is what auditioning gives you. I am such a firm believer. Most of the acting that you do as an actor is through auditioning. When I say I'm an actor and people are like, have I seen you in anything? It's ignorant, because then I want to be like, well, you don't watch my auditions. That is the work. A lot of the work, 95% of the acting that I do as a human being happens through an audition. But it's so frustrating when people, I'm like, I'm a working actor, and people are like, oh, have you been in anything I've seen you in? Because it is just an overall ignorant understanding that we have of this industry. A miscalculation of what makes part of this industry really exhausting is that the acting that you're gonna do is happening in auditions and you will never see it. My memory is foggy, so the exact number, I no longer remember it. But Gossip Girl was within the 70 to 80 range for me in terms of auditions that I had done. I started auditioning professionally when I got agents. Because I went to acting school, you know, I'd met like some casting people, and, you know, my teacher as a former casting director, she kind of has a nose to the ground, even if she is retired out of casting specifically. Once graduated, I would kind of get little auditions like that. Just so people know, for foundation, because I'm not doing anything exciting today. Not wearing any of my good goods, but I'm wearing a mix of this Yensa Skin On BC foundation thing, and then the Kat Von D. Both of them are not my color, but when you mix them, they're my color. People I'd met through school were sending me auditions every now and then, and it would be like once every 6 months, and I was like, oh, like cool. I think I did like 3 auditions before I got agents, right? I had made the decision that, like, because of the pandemic, I was gonna focus on building connections and learning about this industry through a behind the scenes route. So I wasn't really as, like, in the beginning, like, I wasn't really going to open calls and all that kind of stuff. And I'll talk about that closer to the end. But, like, yeah, at that time, I wasn't really doing all of that. through one of my connections that I met at school, an outstanding man and casting director, he connected with me with my first team that I worked with. That's when I started auditioning for real. And that's when I realized, okay, this is not a situation where I'm gonna get 3, 4. Ooh, the melt is. We're gonna take a quick melt interlude. We're gonna get into the melt. Hello? 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 Hi. Right. Also, the foundation match is kind of insane because I'd even put foundation on my forehead and it looks like I'm immaculate. An immaculate, very soft, glowy day. So once I started auditioning with them, that's when I really understood like what the real game was, what the tea was. Y'all, first week I was doing like 6, 7 auditions a week. I said, oh, wait. At the time I was working full-time at the Late Show, and I didn't want them to know I was auditioning because I didn't want them to think I was on no funny shit when I was at work, right? Like I was one step out the door, because I really wasn't. Like, you never know when you're gonna book, so you just gotta focus and grind, right? And so I was doing 12 hours a day at work and then coming home and doing 3, 4 tapes at a time. When we first started, it was nonstop. That was February. I booked Gossip Girl in July. From February to July, I had done between 70 to 80 auditions. Auditioning is a numbers game because if the odds in everyone's favor is to hear no, in order to increase your odds, you need to increase your name in the lottery, so to speak, in Hunger Games terms, right? And you put your name more often in the lottery so that your odds can go up. The more auditions you do, the more your odds will go up that one of them will say yes. Since doing Gossip Girl, I'm well into, that was 2021 when I got that job. It's now it being 2023, I'm well into over 300 auditions in my back pocket. I've heard one yes. When I remind myself of that's like the statistics of it. One, how grateful I am for that one yes. The system isn't set up, so I'm just constantly hearing yes. Because 300 auditions sounds like a lot. But when you understand that that's been 300 auditions in 2 years, then you also understand that like 300 auditions is not a lot if I have to do 300 to get one. Like, it's a numbers game. No is the standard. Maybe is what you hope for. Yes is a rarity. Rather than running away from that reality, I embrace that reality. Every time I turn in an audition, the thing I'm taking away is I actually get better as an actor, because that's the only time I'm acting. You know, and I highly recommend doing so, but unless you're like really tapped into your theater community, unless you're creating your own little things, whether it's skits on TikTok or short films on YouTube or Vimeo, as an actor, your only real connection to acting is the acting that you do in a tape, right? And so for me, the only time I get stronger as an actor is the acting that I do in a tape. Now, like, if you can master the acting of an audition, then the acting on set is so easy, because then you just go back to what we're learning, where it's like you are making choices, but you're also responding. Now, once I get on set, because I perfected this with nothing, I trained myself to do it with nothing. The moment I get on set, like, and you're giving me all these things, it's instinct. It's like, oh, okay. Right? Because when I had to do it originally, y'all didn't even give me nothing. And so now you giving me all this feels like, oh, this is a privilege. Shout out to you, right? Like, that's kind of what it becomes. That's how I want you to understand it. And so for me, yeah, acting, like auditioning just became acting training. I started to use that as a window to see how skillful I am as an actor, because I realized that I could not rely on it to give me a validation of a job. Because there are so many times I do a tape and I'm like, I would eat. Like, I would absolutely be perfect for this. And then it goes through the gambit of whoever's gonna see it. And then at some point, somebody's like, yeah, but the other girl is she lives a little closer. That's not meaning I need to move, right? It can be that fickle sometimes. And it's really hard it is hard to accept that. But if you adjust your expectations a little bit to not come to an audition and expect the world, then you can get something else from it. And for me, that's always the training. Another thing is you need to find a system for auditioning that works for you. I have peers that don't memorize their auditions, they read them. However they do it. Sometimes they might have the script in hand, right? Or it's like I know other people who like they have to memorize every single word, whatever it may be, like do all the text work and all that stuff. See if you can guess where I fall on that range. I think the biggest thing, regardless of where you fall and how you do auditions, you need to find a system for you that feels sustainable. For me, I knew that every time I sat down and did serious character work on a role, every time that I sat and I opened up my acting journal and I really dug into the life and times of a person, that person now stayed with me. That it is a privilege, in my opinion, to have a character come and get to stay with me. I don't give that privilege to everyone. Therefore, when it comes to preparing for auditions, I am not giving that privilege. I'm not opening my acting book. No, I'm not. Because there are other ways for me to dive in and do the work and get to know a character and like have the words and all that stuff that does not require the same level of intensity that I brought on a paid job on set. My thing is certain privileges for me as an actor, you gonna have to pay for them. You want hours and hours and an end of intense character work where I can now tell you who her mama's daddy's daddy left cousin was? You gonna have to pay me for that. For free, I can do a level of work that when you watch the tape, you're gonna be like, whoa, that was great. And then it will be a nice, pleasant surprise when I pull up on set and I give you 8 times as more because now you're paying for that, right? Like, I feel like there's a way to balance that. Find that balance. As an actor, when you're auditioning, especially because it's for free, find the limit. Find the thing that you're like, that is worth money. I'm not gonna give that to an audition. It does not necessarily mean that you're coming from a place where you don't care. No, it is preservation. Caring and preservation are 2 different things, right? Every audition I get, I care, and I'm going to put 100% in. But in that, a real skillful actor will find a way to give you 100% while secretly having a makeshift 50% in the closet, and you didn't even know that 50 was there. Because that 50 is not for anybody else but you. If you have 150% to offer, you give them 100 and you hide your 50. And whatever that 50 is for you, you do it. Find that boundary. You need to create a boundary for yourself where you're saying that there is a value to what I do. When I'm coming into as an actor, I'm gonna bring a little pump that you're gonna have to put a receipt attached to the end of that so that you don't feel like they're taking everything and you're not getting anything in return. When I set that 50% aside, that way it's easier for me to see auditioning as an acting lesson or acting training. Because when you're in school, and y'all know this, when you're in school, the effort you put in college is different from the effort you put when you got your first corporate job. Now, it might give an indication, right? Like, it will give an indication of how much you will care, right? I was the girl who did every assignment on time, 100%, blah, 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 blah. And yet, when I first started getting like checks and working, I suddenly was doubling that. I didn't know I could double that, but I was doubling that because something about being rewarded for your efforts will bring new efforts. So you need to understand that within auditioning. At least for me, that's how I keep myself sane. When my team sends me an audition, I give it what my boundaries allow me to give it. And to be honest, that is 100%. But what they don't know is there's 50% in the back. That is for me. And I keep that safe for me to preserve me so that at the end of the day, there's something in my cup. So many of my actor friends have nothing in their cups. You have to find that boundary. I cannot tell you what that boundary is. I cannot define that for you, but my God, find it. find it. Find that boundary for yourself so that when you do an audition, you do not feel like you gave them everything. Don't let that be a little secret. You know what I mean? My team still gets 100%. My odds of getting one yes in 300, 1 in 300 is insane odds this early in my career. So I'm not coming from a place where I'm saying this and it don't got merit, right? Because a lot of people will tell you, you have to do way more auditioning and grinding to get the one. And most of the time it's 1 in 1,000, not 1 in 300. And in my case, 1 in 80. So know that it's coming from a place of like, it works to preserve a little bit for your heart and yourself and your sanity. Because every time I come in audition, I come fresh. And when I stop being able to come to audition fresh, that's when I really mess myself up, right? I am a firm believer in the health of your day job. It was a lot easier for me to audition when I was at The Late Show, when I had a day job that, yes, it required more time, but it made my brain healthier and more content, so that every time I walked in an audition, I went in fresh, all right? I'm a big believer on that. In order to navigate that, I'm gonna be transparent with y'all. The Late Show did not know I was auditioning on the side or as an actor, because I knew that there would be assumptions and I didn't have time for whatever those assumptions may be. I need to make money, and I said this is a good place to make money and sustain myself in this career. So I was very careful to not let my full-time job as an auditioning actor impact anything, whether it's my personality, my attitude, or my work ethic. That's it. You would not be able to tell. And I was very cognizant to do that. But like, I think that coming from a place where I made sure that my day job, when you have to have a day job, I really tried to find a day job that was good for my sanity, not necessarily my time. It was more work on me because, and I'm grateful for self-tapes because of that, because in the era where you used to have to go into every audition, it was really hard for you to find a steady job that might make you feel secure and then also tape all the time. For me, because I had a steady job and, you know, I kept it cute. Yes, it was harder work, but I was always fresher in every audition because I didn't feel necessarily as burdened, right? It is harder for me to audition now than back then, even though I have all the time in the world, because my brain is clouded. My brain is like, rent. And I wasn't thinking about that before. So it was easier then. It's harder now because my brain is clouded. You get what I'm saying? So like, if you can, and you can't always. I'm literally came from a position where I was doing that, right? Brain really clear, auditioning really clear, booked a job. Now, brain is clouded, I am clouded, everything is clouded, and I'm still auditioning. I understand both sides. But I'm saying if you can do it, I would highly recommend, like, almost like a suffer to gain mentality. I'd rather suffer through, like, doing a very full-time job that makes me feel secure so that I can feel secure in a tape. Because security, mental toughness shows up rather than desperation. Desperation in a tape is giving like, pick me, choose me, love me. And in this industry, they tend not to, they don't necessarily respond as well to that mindset. You know what I mean? When it comes to technical requirements, do what you can. This industry is already so much an investment. If you can't afford to film on an audition on anything that's not your phone in the window of your house, that's where you audition from. Trust your talent, right? That's where you audition from. It's more important to invest in the lighting. I would say like, all the ring lights I use are like, was using like $20 ring lights. It's just like whatever works for you. Just understand that the thing they're looking for technically is to be able to see, hear you, and not be distracted. Find the friend who is, down and patient and whatever, and that can be difficult. If you are signed, definitely rely on your agents and be like, yo, I need a reader and it's finna be you, like all that kind of stuff. If you're unsigned and you're looking for a reader, literally just the least offensive. It probably just means anyone that's not your parents. I find that parents, they really be putting their spin on it. Then once you get through the technical, you have to understand that there's a mental game of auditioning. You're going to be doing it. You're going to be doing it. I mean, I don't even, kid myself thinking like one day when I'm no longer, you're going to be doing it, right? So understanding the mental toughness of that and finding the other thing that you can get for them, right? Like I find it as acting practice, right? Also, sometimes I find it as inspiration. I'll get these tapes and I'll be like, this is not written from a place of somebody who is used to speaking. Like, sometimes it's like scripts will be written in a way that it's like no one really talks like that because the people who are writing it are more into the intellectual sound of it rather than the sound of it, That's fine. I kind of use that inspiration sometimes and I'll learn off of that. I find something else that the audition will give me. And the last thing, throw your auditions away after you're done. One of the things I do is I print them out. Every audition I get, I print out. And it's because once the audition is sent in, I rip it. And then I don't think about it again. Most of the time I'll think about an audition again if my team is like, oh, call back. And I'm like, oh, cool. Now we're at the maybe. And now it's like a little bit more. But you almost have to be as blasé as some of y'all, I know y'all know some of the behind the scenes people can be, right? We hear these stories of like people like they don't even watch all their tapes or whatever. If you know they being that blasé about the receiving, you need to be a little bit that blasé about the giving it up. I put all my energy into the work of the tape. Who this girl is, right? What do I have to do as an actor to convincingly make y'all think I could be this girl as an actor, right? Ooh, this was really tough for me. Why was that so tough for me? What does I need to work on? Clearly I got to work on something because that really hit me in a weird place. That's what I get from it. The job itself, I have a team to go fight for that. And even if I didn't have a team, you cannot put so much emphasis that if you don't get a job, it kills you. Just to get like, a little more serious. The common thing I see with whether it's people who are trained, whether it's people who are aspiring what it is they come in so bright-eyed and ready for anything this industry has to offer. And then they start auditioning and a light just leaks out of them. It just leaks. It is a light that just seeps from their skin slowly, and I watch people dim in real time. No. It makes me emotional to think about because, it's so hard to survive in this industry. I mean, like, technically, right? To be even able to afford to do everything I've said, right? And that is why there's a separate conversation of like, actors deserve compensation for auditions because it's expensive and it's difficult, but it's also frustrating because sometimes people last in this, especially young people last in this industry because they have a financial backing that allows them to sit through this gambit and not have to think too much about it because they're like, quirky, I'm gonna audition every now and then, but at the end of the day, I'm good, right? It's really scary and hard to audition when you're thinking you're like, am I good? I don't know if I'm good, y'all. I don't know if I'm good. Like, y'all, I don't know if I'm good. Like, it's really hard to do an audition. And so, they'll tell you the rate and you're looking at it, you're like, if somebody gave me that much money, I wouldn't have to think about nothing anymore. If somebody gave me that much money, I wouldn't have to work so hard. I wouldn't have to, like, it could all come true. And like, the first thing I'll say to that is, there's no guarantee of anything in this industry. So be wary of that mindset too, because sometimes you'll be given what you thought you wanted and you accidentally, and you're handed a curse. Be careful, right? Of putting so much emotional weight on the idea that one acting job will transform your life. Be careful. But also beyond that, it's a mind game. It is a mind field to go in and like be told about a project, and then they also tell you the financial backing of the project, and you're looking at your life and it's like, well, that's 7 months of rent right there, solidified, don't have to think about it. That's a down payment on any house, on my mama's house, on a car, right? And you're like, you do this auditioning and you send it in and you're like, that's a down payment on my mama's car, that's a down payment on my mama's car. And most of the time you won't hear anything. It's not even like you'll know, you won't hear anything. Like, you literally won't hear anything. No one will say anything to you. And then you sit and you're left with what? Because you gave your audition everything. You gave that audition everything and you didn't ask it for anything back. I use auditioning as an acting training as almost like a demand. You will be this free acting class for me if you are going to ask this of me in return, right? Right? I have my 50%. I have my system for how I do auditions, and I stick by it because you will get 100, but I'm not giving you that 150. Holding strong in that way is the only way you'll make it through. It's the only way you'll make it through this. Because it is very tough. And to every actor, oh my goodness, to every actor in this, whether you've been this for 30 years or you're a new baby like me or wherever, big, low, whatever, auditioning sucks, don't it? It does. Know that you are not being rejected because your part is somewhere. No is not a slight on you. It is not an indication of a lack of talent on your part. You are in control of what your talent is, what your skill is. If you feel like you're weak in some regard, you strengthen that. You don't wait for a project to strengthen that. You strengthen that, right? Like, give yourself some of that autonomy back a little bit. But it's hard, and we see each other. Stop giving them 150. Give them 100. And when you go home, at least you have your 50. And let go of these auditions. Take the small that you can get from it, whatever it may be, and then you have to let go and allow that yes to just naturally come back. It is the hardest grind. It is one of the hardest grinds. I mean, like, I could do a whole series about auditioning because there's so many levels to it. Technically, makeup wise, what do you wear? How do I do this? Like, it is a technical thing. And, I did touch up on the technicals in this video, but this video is really not about that. This video is about, actors are not preserving their mental health when they audition. Every time I get into tape and I finish and I shred that audition and I don't remember a single line from it ever again, unless I'm paid to do so. Every time I do that for myself, I save a little piece of my brain and I save a bigger piece of my heart so that I can stay motivated. It's not about being delusional. It's about staying motivated. It's a marathon, right? Which means it's going to be a long slog. And that's how I keep myself a little motivated, What do you think? The question is, what do I think about open calls as an unsigned actor? Are they really worth a shot, or is time better spent elsewhere? Oh my goodness. I didn't really get into auditioning as an unsigned actor because I did it for a year and 6 months, but it's not like I was really auditioning that often. And I wasn't really going to open calls. Now, I want to make it clear, I wasn't going to open calls because I decided when that pandemic happened and I got kicked off that I would focus on the behind the scenes. So at that point, I was working in marketing for BT. Like, I kind of adjusted my current focus so that I could survive this pandemic and hold down until I felt that God was going to strike me with luck. Because I always say luck is a skill, right? So I knew that one day I was going to get lucky in this, but I would be luckier if I was in New York when that happened. So in that time period before I got signed, my big focus was doing whatever I could so that when somebody asked me, I could say I was based in New York, which meant taking, low paying jobs and like very entry level marketing and stuff so that I could pay rent, and that's it. But so that I could pay rent And then when somebody offered me the big thing, I was ready for the big thing. Does that make sense? So that was my experience there. However, if that wasn't where my mind was, I would have done open calls all the time. Let me tell you something a little bit about this, like the science behind an open call. First, they're gonna launch their net. That net is going to be within the confines of what we already know, right? So I'm gonna go to the top agencies. Give me all your girls who fit this vibe. Gonna go through them. If we're starting with the open call or we've hit an open call, that means two things. I'm looking for something so specific. I'm not sure it exists yet. I'm not sure the industry discovered it. The only difference between a signed and an unsigned actor is someone discovered you. I was discovered. That's it. That's it. Somebody discovered you and is now vouching for you and is pushing you forward because I'm like, vouch, discovery. As an unsigned actor, you having a spot, all of that stuff is there. You just haven't been discovered yet, right? So when you go to an open casting call, they're looking at the part. What if the perfect guy for this hasn't been discovered yet? Are we gonna limit ourselves? No, we're gonna do an open call and just try to find everybody. There is so much value to win a room. Ooh, that's another thing. Ooh, to think I was gonna finish this video without one of the biggest things. Oh, thank you, Lucky. Let me tell you, Lucky, because I almost got one of the biggest things you can get from auditioning. Win a room, baby. Win a room. And the same thing applies to open casting. In an open casting call, you might go in there and you might not get the role of Maria in West Side Story, but you were second and you ate. And they looking at you like, why are you not acting? You got an agent? You should be doing this. Everybody wants to discover somebody. Everybody wants to be that person who discovered so-and-so, right? Like that amazing casting director who opened that door for me will now always be a part of my story. And I'm happy to have him there. But that's also like in a little bit of a selfish way, and not selfish in a bad, but like, don't give myself a pat on the back. Everybody wants to be a part of your discovery story, right? And so when you go to open casting, they might not be able to give you that part, but they're like, whoa, that's a new talent. I need to see more. I need to see more. How can I do that? How can I make it happen that I see more? So like, there's so much value to it. Go to any open call, go to it and give it your 100%. Every time you walk in a room, it's worth it. Every time you walk in a room, it's worth it. Make fans. Don't villainize casting. Don't take it out on them. Their lives are tough. Oh my gosh. Their lives are tough. It's so hard to do that within the confines of what production may have, right? Like the producers and the director especially might have a vision and the studio might just be like, no. And who has to handle that? Casting, right? So like, it's not about finding the villain. It is about winning them over. I go in every tape I send, I ask for two things in return. I ask for an experience that will allow me to be a little better of an actor, and I win a room. I may never see that room. I don't know what that room is. I don't see it. All right, I don't know who's in it. When I send in tapes, I don't know who's in the room or what they're doing in the room, but I win them. I win them, and I know I'm winning them because they come back every time. Because it's a numbers game, it's an odd game, and they're like, oh, we haven't found the right thing for her, but we're gonna find it. When we find it, it's gonna be it. You know what I mean? Win a room. Win a room and get your little training. But just know that because no is the standard, it is not personal because it's happening to everyone. You have a seat at the table and you belong, okay? And auditioning, it is just as important to know the lines as it is to know yourself and take care of your heart and your mental, because that's how you survive. Once you get through understanding for yourself what you gotta do to handle the process of auditioning, then you can survive. And once you survive, your break, whether it is in a year, 10 years, 30 years, whether you're Michelle Yeoh or Ki Hee Kwan and Brandon Fraser, or you knock it out the park after you're the cast of Queen Charlotte and you're already famous off of one gig, right? It's about survival, whatever that length of time may be. And if your brain is broken, you will not survive. Do not let the biggest, most standard, crucial part of your job break you. Keep your 50%. Okay, my face is done. My ranting is done. You have gotten ready with me. I'm gonna go off. If you enjoyed this video, stick around. I guess I'm gonna come here more often. I don't know. All I know is that I'm Grace. This is my space. And whether I'm talking to 40 of you, 400, or just 2, I'm happy you're here. And I hope that anything I say can give you a little comfort, because this is my comfort spot. And I realize because this is my comfort spot, I hope that it can be your comfort spot too. So come back next time, or don't. It's a really free country and this is a really free channel. So thank you again for joining me as I get my makeup done. There was like so much to get into. Honestly, more to get into than the time it took me to do my makeup. I had to stretch it out there a little bit. So if you have any questions, if there's anything I didn't get to, there's so much ground to cover that I might just do a part 2 off rip. But especially if you have any questions, put them in the comments. And if I see them, I'll make a part 2 to this. But yeah, please, there's no escaping auditioning. So I guess the moral of the story is find a way to play the game and do not let the game play you. And whatever that looks like for you is what it looks like for you. Thank you so much for coming. I'm off to start my day and I'll see you in the next one. Maybe the next one will be really soon. And maybe the next one will be in 7 months. I like to keep people on their toes. I'm a Libra. Bye. Say cheese, take a picture. Take a picture. Say cheese. Okay, my boyfriend bought me waffles. It's time to go eat. Bye.